Right, this is going to be episode 2 of the BSA engine project. Welcome back. Alright, obviously I've got the engine up on the bench just like it was last time. I haven't done anything to this in about a week. There's been other stuff going on. I've been helping my son move down so he can go to trade school this year, so hopefully that'll turn out to be a good thing, and I'm looking forward to that for him. Anyways, let's see what I have to do. I think I'll start off by taking the timing cover off first. It really doesn't matter which side you work on. Let me think now. This little shift mechanism has to stay inside. So what you need to do, there's a little Allen key right there on the back of this little tab here that goes in between this return spring. You just back that off, and then you can take this tab out of here, and then that part's out of the way. This little slotted affair is the little plunger that pushes on the clutch push rod. You can leave it in if you want, but it's probably going to fall out, so you're better off if you just grab a hold of that with a pair of pliers, pull that out of the way. The kick shaft, you can push that in and leave it in place as you take it out, or you can pull it out with the whole assembly. I don't think it really matters unless I'm mistaken on that. But the one thing I wanted to mention was make sure that you take the tach drive out if you're working on a Lightning. The Thunderbolts don't have a tachometer, so you don't need to worry about it. But there's a little shaft that goes in through that hole and goes into the top of the oil pump. The oil pump has two tongs on it that fit into kind of like a little screwdriver affair that drives that drive to the tachometer cable. So you got to make sure you take that out before you try pulling this whole affair off of here, because if you don't, you will break the top of the oil pump drive and you'll wind up with busted tongs on the top of the oil pump. And I can't tell you how many oil pumps I have seen on these BSAs that are broken like that. So anyway, I'm going to pull that out, take this little L-shaped sort of a chap off of here, and I've already got the drive out of the oil pump, so I don't need to worry about breaking that. Then all I got to do is take out all these screws here, and I should be able to pull that cover off without too much trouble at all. Stand by and we'll see what happens. Okay, I've backed off that little screw on this little return spring piece, so I should be able to just get a screwdriver behind there. And there, geez, that came off easy. Okay, so I should be able to just pull that right off of there. And there, you can see that screw right there. You don't have to take it right out. You just need to get it to disengage from the shaft. These two tabs here are what actually grabs onto this part of the shift shaft. Let me remove that spring out of there now. That's in nice shape. I won't need to worry about replacing that, at least. Yeah, those two tabs lock right into that the shaft there, and the little grub screw just holds that in place. So we take that off, and we're going to put that in there. I might screw that little screw in there a couple more turns just to make sure it doesn't fall out. Anyway, okay, next thing I'm going to do is see about pulling out that clutch plunger. Let's see if the good old vice grips will do that. Yep, there it is. Clutch plunger. Anyway, there it is. So I'm going to put that in there so I don't lose that. There is usually a ball on the inside of that. I can't tell if it's there or not. Anyway, I'll wipe that out. Just give me a second here. Yep, I wiped the oil out of there. The ball is in there, so it hasn't fallen out. And it may not. Just make sure, if you take it out, that the ball stays in. Anyway, I'll put that in this little tin right there so I don't lose that. Now, I believe all I have to do is take these screws out of here. Some of these are pretty ugly looking, so I'll use my impact driver on them. And this is one you hit with a hammer, not an electric one. So, yeah. Let me see if I can get them out without too much trouble. Excuse me. Okay, I'm not going to bore you too much with this, but there's my old impact driver. Oh my God, how many years ago I bought that? Lord, I think I was probably 20 when I bought that, so that would be 47 years ago. I've bought several replacement bits, but the actual impact driver itself is working quite well still after all that time. So anyway, all you got to do is make sure you got it in the right spot. That's a 2-pound dead blow hammer. I find they're great for doing this kind of thing because you're hitting that with 2 pounds of lead shot that's wrapped in rubber, so you don't get a really hard wrap that will mushroom out the end of your driver. There she goes. So I'm going to keep going around and make sure all these get loosened up. Did I do that one there? Well, that loosen off, yeah. Got that one. This one's being a bit stubborn, and of course the engine's moving. Whoops. Did you go that time? Yep, that one's loose. Let's get this one. Sometimes you just got to get yourself in a good position and really give it a good whack. Come on, baby. I know you'll come. There you go. Anyway, I'm not going to bore you with taking all the screws out, but just make sure before you try to get the cover off of there that you do have all the screws out. If it doesn't come loose right away, stop and find out why. Never try to force anything with these old bikes, because that aluminum, it's like soapstone. You look at it sideways and it'll break. So I'm pretty sure I've got all the screws out of there. By the way, this engine is a 69, so it has the coarser 20 threads per inch size instead of the British Cycle Industry threads. So if I decide to replace them, it would be quite easy to do that in a local supply store. I could just buy Allen head screws or cheese head ones, whatever they have. So I'm just going to give this a gentle wrap. And you hear that? Look at the water coming out of there. Oh my gosh. It's full of water. This is why you shouldn't put your bikes outdoors for long periods of time. That water probably came in through that dipstick and went right into the transmission. I really hope that it hasn't hurt anything in there, especially in terms of the bearings and stuff. So, okay, I know that's loose. We get a little bit less aggressive screwdriver than that big one I was using before. And I should be able. Oh, by the way, there's oil is coming out of there now. Yeah, that's good. So, I didn't bother draining the transmission because there's always oil that drips out of here anyway. So, okay. Like I say, I'm just going to push those 2 shafts in. I'm quite sure that the kick shaft will come out with the cover. But if I'm leaving the shift shaft in, I might as well take that one the same way. Oh, there's a little bit of rust up here on on the shift dog mechanism, and a tiny little bit right here on the end of that main shaft. But the kick mechanism there, the ratchet stuff, looks in pretty good shape. I am just going to, oh look, the intermediate timing gear came out. I'm just going to slip that back in there for now so I don't drop it. Anyway, that's just for now. Of course, I know it's not in the right position, but it doesn't matter because everything's coming apart anyway. So I'm going to set this up here for now. I'll find a nice tray to let that drip off in, and I'll bring you in close here to have a look at the internals under the timing side. So obviously that's your kick quadrant right there. You can take that right off. I'll put that there. Put that in a nice little parts bin with a cover on it after a while. This is the shift mechanism with the dogs on it. It engages with this shift plate right here. And that is where I was talking about the little bit of rust damage from water getting in there and that. That's your ratchet mechanism for the Kickstarter. This is the main shaft, by the way. The lay shaft is right there underneath. I find these transmissions here very nice to work with. They're a lot like the Triumph 500 ones, the little unit twins and that, because these really are a plug and play unit. Like, you can assemble that transmission and slide the whole thing right into place. Of course, I can't right now because the clutch is connected to the other side, but that'll be the next place I look, is in the primary there. See what we've got. Okay, now the timing side here. These gears appear to be in nice condition. They're nice and oily and not rusty. The worm drive for the oil pump looks good. The oil pump itself looks good. As you can see, it's got that little slot where the drive fits into, and neither one of those tongs are broken off, so that's great. And by the way, this bike had been sitting for 5 years and had not wet sumped. So the little check valve that's underneath the oil pump to prevent wet sumping was obviously working, because all the oil was still in the oil tank. As a matter of fact, most of it's there where I'm dripping the transmission oil into now. But anyway, the next thing I'll be doing, I'll just take this off here, this shift mechanism. I don't know if I can do that one-handed or not. Can you come out of there, darling, and get you on camera? Or do I need to put the camera down and do this with 2 hands? No, I better do it with 2 hands. I don't want to lose anything. Anyway, I will take that out of there. Then, of course, well, this I can get out of there now. I'll just slip that in there for the time being. Okay, next thing to do, of course, take this off. I'm going to leave this bolt on there right for now, or nut, I should say, on there for now. And I'm not going to remove the transmission until I get the primary apart on the other side there. The oil pump could come out. I may just leave that cam gear right in place. Those bushings feel just fine, so there might not be any point in taking it out. Okay. Yeah, no point in doing work you don't need to do, but the oil pump will need to come off, and to do that I need to take this this little nut off the end of here, and if memory serves me right, don't quote me on this, but I believe that's a left-hand thread. I'll confirm that with you after I get it off, but yeah, we'll wait till the next little clip here or two so I can tell you straight. I don't want to give you any misinformation or anything. Okay, so I was right about that. The little lock nut and the worm drive are both left-hand thread. So you have to turn them in the opposite direction that you would to get them off. Just kind of keep that in mind. Next thing to come out, I will remove these 3 little nuts that hold that oil pump in place, and I should be able to pull that right off. Just be a little bit careful when you do it, because you're going to find a little check valve, which is nothing more than a ball bearing with a spring behind it. Don't lose that. Okay, so I've got the 3 little nuts off of that oil pump. Let me tell you, they weren't on there very tight. So that oil pump should just very easily come off of there. And if you're lucky, I'll drop the ball and the spring in that nice greasy oil pan, and you get to have a laugh at me. Meanwhile, I'll see if I can keep my hand under there. One thing is, if the ball and spring fall in the oil pan, they're not going to go rolling all over the floor, at least. Now, I don't see any ball. I don't know if you can see that or not, but the ball is sitting right there in the oil pump. So I'm going to take that out, put that in the little parts place. I'll set that nice oily oil pump right there in that case. All right, now here is the little spring that holds that ball against the back of the oil pump. That's actually on the outlet for the pressure side from the oil pump. So what will happen is when the engine stops, that pushes the ball up against the face of the oil pump right there on that little tapered sort of section. And if everything's working the way it's supposed to, that will effectively shut off the oil flow coming from the tank, so that you won't get a wet sumping issue with the engine. Now, I'm not going to bore you with too much else on this side. I will probably put a couple of little pry bars under there and pull that pinion off, because it's going to need to come off anyway. But I might need to resort to my puller. I do have a proper one to go on here, but usually I find that a couple of little screwdrivers. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Talk about these angled screwdrivers like this one right here. I find if I put them underneath of each side of those pinion gears, they'll usually come out. I think that just moved a little bit already. Anyway, I'm going to take that off, and then I will start removing stuff on the primary side. Maybe I can get this out here before I do that. Now that I have 2 free hands to work with. Yeah, see? Okay, that's the little ratchet mechanism that connects with that plate right there on the shift plate. So yeah, other than being a little tiny bit rusty, it's in pretty good shape. So that's a good thing. I'll clean that up good, long before reassembly. But yeah, let me just get that off of there. And I promised to tell you if I had to use the puller or not. Okay, there it is. I did use my little puller to get that off of there. It's not the factory tool, but hey, it works. It wasn't hard to get off. It just needed a little, it was easier this way rather than prying it. I think I could have pried it off, but you know what? I didn't need to. I just used that. Right, same day. It's after lunch. Took a little break here for, how long? I guess about 2 hours for lunch today. Anyway, I had to go up and pick up my truck. It was up there to get some brake work done on the front end. So anyway, that should be good for another year or so anyways, before I have to do anything else to that. Meanwhile, I got the engine turned around. I'm ready to take that primary cover off. That should be pretty straightforward. It's just those Allen key or Allen head bolts on there. So I'll get them out of there, pull that cover off, and see what kind of stuff is inside. I'm not expecting to find anything too terrible in there. So Got all the screws out except for this top one. I better check again just to make sure I didn't do anything stupid and leave something in there. No, got them all out. If you feel around on these covers, you can usually find a part that's sticking up proud enough that you can get the edge of a screwdriver or something like that up against the edge to give it a little tap. I've left this bolt in here in case it comes just flying off, that it doesn't go on the floor, but that bolt's backed off almost all the way. So let me see if I can find my hammer with the brass and plastic end on it. Give this a little tap and see what happens. Okay, that came off quite easy. I don't know what they had in here for gasket compound, but it doesn't look like anything more serious than silicone anyway. Alright, that's nice and loose. Grab the Allen key and take that last one out of there. Put that over there with the rest. Put the Allen key back. Alright. Nothing too surprising there. See, there's been some issues with that at some point or another. That's been, the bike's probably been dropped, and this area here was probably damaged and I might be holding that up too high. This area here might have been damaged by the foot peg bashing into it. Anyway, it looks like it's been welded shut and polished over, and the inside ground so that the clutch will clear it and that. So I'm just going to set that there on that timing case and just give you a quick little look at what I see in here. Okay, I don't really see any surprises. Pretty much typical, a little bit of rust here and there on a pressure plate. The bike was charging, so the stator and rotor are probably just fine. There's something going on with the rubber though on that. Yeah, that's not original. Somebody, it looks like, has replaced the original pad with rubber. It looks like they tried to rivet it on or something. So that's going to need to be replaced. No, that's not rivets, that's screws going in there. Well, I'll give them points for trying at least, but that's not a good job. So that will need to be replaced, that adjustable shoe. If I'm lucky, I may even have one over there in my spare parts bin, but next thing to do is take the 3 nuts off the alternator stator, take that off, and we'll get the rotor off of there after that. Then we'll remove the nuts off the clutch. Those nuts are pretty messed up, especially this one. The slot in there is all chewed up. Anyway, we'll get her apart. It's not that big of a deal. Okay, I got almost all the internals out of there. There's one spacer that sits there inside the seal. Anyway, that will come out when I split the cases. And there wasn't really anything spectacularly weird or anything in here. A couple of little things. I mean, they had these 2 big washers in underneath the generator's rotor as a spacer. I don't know why they were using those, but anyway, something I can address later. There's the clutch hub and the little thrust washer. Anyway, that's okay. The basket itself, there's a little bit of bumpiness inside where the friction plates hold on. I may have a look around, see if that basket can be replaced with something a little better. Or there is a swap meet coming up pretty soon. Let me think. I'm not sure if it's October or what this year. Anyway, yeah, I'll be looking into that. Let's see. There's the clutch hub. That seems to be all right. I will check the rubbers inside here. Usually, some people like to change them, but usually they're in decent shape, and I just leave them in. But I will have a look at them and make sure they're not falling apart or anything. There is that adjuster plate that was under there. That was running without anything on there for a while. Now, gee, you know, there are some of these bikes that run steel on steel with these chain tighteners, like for example Norton Commandos, the cam chain adjuster. Those are just plain steel with BSA B44s. The chain adjuster in the primary is just plain steel again, but like I said, there is supposed to be a sort of I guess you'd call it a fiber plate that's kind of glued onto this. Or anyhow, this is going to get replaced because that's not right. I mean, they've stuck screws in here, and those are good old Canadian Robertson head screws. So this is a job that somebody's done before, and they had screwed on a piece of rubber. I don't know if I can still find that or not. Yeah, here it is. That's the piece of rubber they had on there, and that's all that is a piece of gasket rubber. I don't know what made them think that that would work. Anyway, here's the adjuster bolt for the primary chain adjuster. It even has the plastic button is still in there, so that's a good thing. But there wasn't any kind of a lock nut or anything on the underneath of this where you would lock that in position. So it was just by the grace of God that was keeping that chain tight. I mean, it could have gone any which way at all. What else? The clutch plates, the friction plates look all right, but I will probably err on the side of safety and replace them with new ones. I mean, they're not that expensive. That's just the cover that came off the sprocket there. That is a puller that I made up years ago for taking those little clutch hubs off with. And anyway, that puller works really well. I've been really proud of that. So anyhow, I guess that's about it for right now. The next thing to do is take out all the bolts. Oh, of course, I have to take the sump plate off before I separate anything. But take off all the bolts and nuts that are holding this together, including this one in here. Do not forget to take that one out. Yeah, it needs to be unbolted before you try to separate the cases. Anyway, that's enough work for today. It's about 4 o'clock, and I've had enough of this, and I've had fun. So anyway, it's a great thing to do if you've got stuff on your mind. Just get out in the shop and forget about it. Yeah. All right. So there we go. And anyway, next clip will be splitting the cases. Right. Well, they say that curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought him back to life again. And I want to know how much, excuse me, how much radial clearance I have in the timing side bush on this particular engine. I mean, why change something like that when it's just fine? But as you can see, I've got the dial indicator set up there. It's not the greatest mount right now, but it should be able to tell me just exactly how much clearance I have in that bushing. So let's pry up on that crankshaft and see what it does. I'm showing about 5 thousandths there. Let me just get this back. Hold that down so it doesn't wiggle. Yeah, 5 thousandths. So that bushing needs to be dealt with. I believe the standard new clearance for those is 1.5 thou. To be honest with you, I find that a little bit tight. I prefer to set them at 2 myself, because I did have one client who took a bike home that I had set at 1.5 thou. The bike ran perfectly for 2 weeks. Until one day when he left it sitting out in the driveway idling for 20 minutes while he went and put his jacket on. And I got to tell you, these things don't develop a lot of oil pressure when they're idling. And when he went to take off, the engine was still running fine, but when he got the second gear, it nipped up. It grabbed the bushing there because it had gotten too hot. There wasn't enough oil going to it. And I mean, he'd been driving the bike around all over the place for 2 weeks before that. So anyway, I like to give him, like I say, personally, I like to give him about 2 thou clearance. That way I know that if some fool sits there idling in the driveway for 20 minutes, it's not going to nip the bearing up. Okay, we're getting close to the end of this little video. I think this was episode 2, if I remember rightly. Anyway, I decided that I would take that cam gear off of there. You don't really need to do it, but it sure makes it a lot easier to get the timing disc and spring in behind the camshaft when you're putting these things together. If you can put the camshaft in first and then put this case on over it, or this half of the case. As you can see, I've already taken all the bolts out, and of course the old sump plate as well. That's not the prettiest looking one I've ever seen, but it's not the ugliest one either, so that can be returned to service. So as you can see, I've got the 3-legged puller on there. Like I said before, this is not the factory tool, but it certainly does work. So I'm just going to keep turning this off until I get that gear to come off the end of the shaft. That's a right-hand thread on this particular one. You would think that since it was turning the same direction as the crankshaft, they might have put a left-hand thread on it, but I guess with no strain trying to unscrew it like there is on the oil pump, that yeah, that's probably why they just used the right-hand thread. Anyway, that's the cam gear. Looking good. I'm just going to set that there for now. I'll put that in the little box with the other bits and pieces. Now I'm going to leave that little key in there for the time being because it doesn't seem like it's going to fall out. If you find the key loose, well, take it out so it doesn't get lost and put it in a box somewhere. Any old how, as I mentioned before, I already did split the cases, or got them coming apart at least anyways, but let's take it completely apart now. See the old gasket goo in there. I don't know, you don't need to put gasket goo in this section because this section doesn't actually seal together, right? Any old how, I think I will pick this up this way. Oh, that greasy, oily mess. Anyway, with any luck, I should be able to just pull the timing side of the case right up off the crankshaft and everything. Seems to be sort of loose. Okay, I'll get my belly up against there so it doesn't fall off the bench. Alright, stand up there, girl. Don't be falling all over the place on me. Here, I'll put that hammer hand under there and all those greasy old rags and stuff. Okie dokie. From what I can see right now, I don't think that crankshaft has ever been out of this engine. That's just a guess, but judging by what I know and what I've seen before, now let's see. There is, that's the kickstart pin that holds everything in over there. So I'm going to drop that. I'll drop that in that other box with this other little piece that I just took off. Anyway, there's the thrust washer from the end of the crankshaft. That looks in pretty good condition. That goes right in there. It fits in the little slot in the timing side crankcase here. Let me just get that camera off the tripod for a second and I'll show you. That's the thrust washer right there. that copper face would go against the crankshaft in that direction. So when you put it in the crankcase, there's a sort of a little slot machine here inside the bushing, and that will fit right inside that bushing there. So I'm just going to put this somewhere where I won't lose it. I'll just put it over there with these parts for now. Alright, I don't think there's anything else that's going to fall over here. Here's the oil pickup tube that goes in the bottom of the engine, and that feeds the oil pump, the cavern side of the oil pump. And like I said, the bushings are good in this for the camshaft bushings, so I won't need to change them. I've only ever had to do one set of bushings on an engine. That was a Triumph. Usually the bushings for the cams are in nice shape. But let's have a look at the end of this crank. That looks like an original sump plug. So this is unusual. I don't think that this has ever been a part before on that sump plug, or why am I calling that a sump plug? The sludge trap plug. Yeah, that is not been banged up or beat up or anything like that. There's only one set of punch marks in it to hold it in place. So I think that that's the original sump plug in that crankshaft. Okay, let's just pull the camshaft out of there. See if we can lose anything off the end. Now there's a slot there on the end of the camshaft. That's where the timing disc fits in. I'm going to set the camshaft over here for now, and we'll look down in there and see what we can find. Okay, that's a good thing. There's the spring from the timing disc. I'm going to put that right there in the top of that little plastic cover. And if I can stick my finger in there, yes, I'm lucky. I didn't need to use a magnet or anything. There's the timing disc. Those tongs on the end of the timing disc, those little tabs there. I don't know how well this camera's focusing on that, but those fit into those grooves in the end of the camshaft. So when you put this back together, you have to make sure you align all that stuff. And it's a lot easier to do with the camshaft out of the other case. You can do it if you leave it in the case, but anyway, the next thing I'm going to do is just pull the crank out of this side. Hopefully it won't give me any trouble, but I need both hands to do that. So I'm going to put this phone back up in the tripod, and yeah, let's see if I can get that out of there. Okay, I laid it on its side like this, and I went to pull it up, and it already came out because it's roller bearings on this side. So there is the crankshaft. Those rollers don't look bad, but I don't trust reusing old bearings and that sort of thing. So let's have a look at this side. Yeah, everything looks pretty good there. Of course, the seal will get replaced. I'll replace that outer bearing as well. And yeah, the bearing here is not too tight on the shaft, so that should come off of there pretty easily. So, all right. Well, that's it for this little video. The next thing I'll be doing is cleaning up the bench, putting all this stuff in a nice tote somewhere so I can keep track of where all my parts are and that. I'll get the crankshaft up in the vise there, and we'll get the connecting rods off, and we'll start measuring like crank journals and that sort of thing. Hopefully this machine won't need any grinding done on the crank. I'm trying to do this as inexpensively as I can. Like, I don't believe in bells and whistles and that sort of thing. I like to put the standard stuff back in an engine. Like whatever BSA made it with, that's what I want back in it when I put it back together. But anyway, for the time being, be good to each other. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.